Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'm showing you my mid-year statistics and my spreadsheet. So starting at the end of 2019, I started making my own reading spreadsheet. Goodreads and my own memory was not good enough for me. I really love statistics, I love coding spreadsheets, so I decided to make my own so I could track my own statistics. And every year I've reinvented this spreadsheet, added things, taken away things, made things prettier, optimized them, and now I have a spreadsheet that I'm very happy with that I feel like only needs maybe a few tweaks here and there over the course of years rather than fully reinventing it. So I wanted to take you all on a tour of my spreadsheet. I wanted to do this for a couple reasons. One, this acts as my mid-year statistics, so you get to see what my reading is looking like right now, exactly halfway through the year. I have finished all of my June reads, so this is accurate. And maybe this will be very different than my end of the year stats. We'll see how it changes. Second, I just wanted to give you all a tour of what my spreadsheet looks like just for fun, so that you all can see what sort of things I track, what sort of things you can track if you are curious and loves looking at other people's trackers and stats like I do. And third, I actually sell this spreadsheet. So I have an Etsy that I have this template in 3 different colors. So if you want to get this, you can buy it and you can use it yourself. Or if you're someone who came from my Etsy, this can serve as a tutorial and a sample of what it is going to look like. Alrighty, this is my spreadsheet. As you can see on the bottom, it has a bunch of different tabs. I think I'm up to 12, but I have everything separated because it does help the speed of the spreadsheet a lot. It will time out. This is in Google Sheets. I designed it in Google Sheets. When it goes into Etsy, it has to be exported as an Excel spreadsheet and then changed into Google Sheets again. So there have been a couple issues with that, but mostly it has worked just fine. So this is my data entry page. So every time I read a book, Babel was the first book I finished this year, so it's at the top. Every time I finish a book, I put in all of this information about the book. I put in title, author, the demographic of the book, what genre, what rating I gave it. I have it rated 0 to 5 in quarter stars, including DNFs. I have the month I read it in, the page count, the publication year, what medium I read it in, if I owned it, if it was part of my physical collection, when did I get it, is the author new to me, author's gender, ethnicity, if they are queer, representation in the book. Then we have series statistics. Is it in a series? Am I caught up on the series? Am I going to continue in the series? And then where I got the recommendation from. So I put in all of these things. It doesn't take me very long for each book. And all of these statistics go into the bunch of tables that I've made. So I don't actually look at this page. This is just to run the numbers and make sure that they stay in the same spot every single time. And this is my TBR planning page. I usually have it down at the bottom, like further, but I use it all the time because I am a TBR reader. And I have in here, it changes color if I've read it, so I have it coded so that when you type in the title, if I typed in 1,000 ships and I typed that it was in July, it'll turn green for yes. If I read it in a later month, like in August, it'll turn yellow and say later month. So I can see if I'm actually reading things in the month that I do. And as you can see, I am very strictly staying to my TBR just because I plan way ahead of time. Then we have my annual stats page, first time we're looking at statistics. So I've read 65 books so far this year, so projected I should, if I read the same amount, I should read 130 books by the end of the year, which is the most I've ever read. I've read 27,000 pages. I have an average rating of 3.62, which it'll be interesting to see how that compares to previous years because I am doing quarter stars instead of whole stars. I've read 417 pages per book. and the median page count is 360. I wanted to include this because I actually read quite a bit of fantasy, if you know me at all, and so a lot of my books are longer, but I am reading usually a shorter book than 417 pages. I think it's always good to look at those statistics differently. I have an approximate audiobook length. I don't actually write how long the audiobook is. I put in the page count and then I estimate how long it is. I read the most in May. I rated books highest in April. I've read fantasy more than any other genre, checks out. I have rated science fiction the highest, which is interesting. That means I've been picky with my science fiction because I've only read 4 so far this year, because in previous years I have not had great luck with science fiction. And I have hauled 29 books, which is not great, but it's fine. And then I have my longest books read, and I believe that Oathbringer is the longest book I've ever read in my life. So that should be accurate. And then I have a couple of novellas for the shortest books. And then authors that I've read the most, all of these authors are tied for 2 books right now. We have my genre breakdown. So every single book that I've read this year is in here. I've read mostly fantasy, that's 22 books, and then we see speculative, and then general fiction, mystery thriller, and then romance has actually overtaken sci-fi. Interesting. My demographic, pretty consistently over the last couple of years, I read about 1/4 young adult books. Right here we have my star ratings. So this is a bar graph of the ratings that I've given out. Given a lot of straight 3s, straight 4s. I use that more, but I do have some quarter stars in here. Then we have the date that the book was published. So we have a brand new book. That is a book that came out in 2022 or 2023. A recent book is a book that came out in the previous 5 years. And then we have Backlist is a book that has been published since the year 2000. And a modern classic is a book published since the 1900s. I also have classics as anything before that, which of course I have not done a good job of reading this year. We have acquisition year. Unsurprisingly to me, 2022 is the biggest because I work all year to get through the stack of books that I got in the previous year. I should probably read a couple more books that I got this year, and I really want to work on getting through the ones that I have left here. Let's start with the medium breakdown. I have read 19 physical books, 17 library books, 20 audiobooks, 3 ebooks, and 5 books were from a review copy. So I believe all of those are e-arcs at this point, but I do include physical books in that because they were sent to me by the publisher. Maybe in the future I might split it. Since I'm not going to have access to my library, I'm going to be going to a different library system. We'll see if this percentage of library books stays the same. This is a breakdown of my star ratings, but just with whole stars. Makes a little bit more sense. We've got a lot of 4s, a lot of 3s. I know my taste pretty well that you don't see a lot of 1s and 2s. Recommendation sources. I'm reading a lot of books that are because of the author or series. Author or series means it is an author that I've read and liked before, or a series I'm continuing in. It's not because it's a hyped author. We have Whim. So this is a book that I just picked up on my own. I didn't really see any hype about it. I don't really know anything about it other than research that I've done myself. Community is if it's been generally recommended by the bookish community. I didn't really have a specific, like, one person that I got it from. Book influencer is if I do have a specific person it came from. A personal recommendation is somebody telling me specifically that I need to read a book. Book club, if it is a book club that somebody else is running, or if it was voted on by my book club instead of something that I picked for the book club, it goes in there. I got some review copies and other, because you know, you gotta have a miscellaneous category. So then we have the representation. I keep this kind of vague. If I was somebody who read almost entirely contemporary, that might be different. Most of the books that I read, almost half, have both people of color and queer characters actively on page doing things. We have people of color but no queer characters but no people of color, and then none. Here's this cute little flowchart that I made about what my shelf and money is looking like. So I have currently read 20 books from my physical TBR this year. feels great. But I have added 25 books. I haven't gotten any books from my TBR. I've not unhauled any. So that means I have a net total TBR of 5. I have gotten rid of 1 book, but it was an additional copy. I have added 29, so some of them were books that I had already read, so they weren't added to the TBR. So my total net collection is 28. And we can also see my money. So I got $4 back from that 1 book that I unhauled. I spent $235 myself on my collection, but I gained a value of $592 if you were looking at the market price for these books. Just by using the physical books in my library, I estimated how much money I'm saving using paperback average prices and hardcover average prices, and depending on how old the book is, estimating that. So I'm guessing that I've saved almost $350, which I'm very happy with. Then we have some series statistics. So I have read more than half the books that I've read this year are standalones, which I love standalones. I don't want to force myself to read series, but I have so many series I want to read that I need to get better at clearing through those series. This is, if you take out the standalones, this is just series. So books and series, over half of them, almost 2/3, have been the first book in a series. I've read 6 sequels and 4 conclusions. Then we've got my series, am I caught up on them? So of course, there's 4 that I finished. There are over half I am behind on, but a good almost 1/3 I am caught up on. So I really want to get this slice down. And then we have the series that I'm continuing in. I have 4 series that I've for sure DNF'd. I have 3 series that I'm thinking about DNFing, and then the rest of the series that I'm still working on, I'm going to plan on continuing in. Then we have some book haul stats. So this is where I've gotten the book from. I do want to add more options here because I don't have an option for if you buy from a big real retailer. Most of the books that I've gotten were secondhand or from a local indie. I've gotten book boxes, stuff from publishers, and personal gifts. I have not read a single book that I've hauled this year, but I have bought some books that I've already read before I got them. And then we have books read per page range. So this is a very easy bell curve to see. We have this one so big because it's 600, so these are the biggest books, and this gets in the small ones, and these are novellas. And this is the publication year down here. This goes from 1960, I believe, to today. And then when have I owned it from 2018 to now. Now we have my monthly stats page. So everything is broken down by what month. So you can see how my reading changes over the course of a year. My reading started out kind of strong at the beginning of the year. School gets hard in March, and then I was able to read more when school was letting up. I graduated in May, and now I've read a ton in May and June. And then pages per month, I still got the most in May. Then we're going to talk about genre by month. You can see I have general fiction, fantasy, science fiction all at the bottom. Those are ones that are pretty consistently in there all the time. Fantasy is a big chunk of a lot of these. And then we have all the other genres up on top. And then we have medium by month. You can see there isn't a lot of shift between the amount of physical books I'm reading, and that's that bottom 2. We have my average star rating per month, which I should change this, but it is staying pretty consistent, but you can see the good ones. The demographic by month, so this is all adult, and then YA. I do like to mix it up. I like to keep things changing in between books I'm reading. And then we have star ratings per month, not the average rating, but blocking them into stars, and we can see when I had the most 5 stars at the bottom. January, April, and June, I've had 2 5 stars each. And then when we have the stuff at the top, that is not good. Then we have some interesting graphs down here that I'm happy with, that it shows how things are changing with my different TBRs over the course of the year. The green is how many books I've read from my shelf, and the purple is how many I've added to the shelf. I don't have any that I've unhauled from my TBR. I'm getting a lot of books at one time. And then here's the net physical TBR. So when you add all these together, If you start out at 0 at the beginning of the year, this is all below 0. So I've read more than I've acquired, and we are up to +5, like the previous statistics said. So I kind of want to get this number down, but 5 is a number that I'm very happy with already. And then this has to do with my monthly TBR, so the TBR planning sheet that I showed you earlier. The gray right here, which you'll see it lines up perfectly with the purple here, is my monthly TBR. That is how many books did I write down here. And then the purple line is how many books I read from there. And so I've read every single one that I have on there. So these match until it gets to the future starting in July. And then the green is how many I actually read. So if you're someone who doesn't stick to a TBR, you can see that there's a big difference between them. If you're reading a good amount, like maybe as many as you planned, but you're not actually reading the ones that you planned, that's really helpful. So this, you can see I read more than my TBR, but I did stick to my TBR. Then we're going to go into my genre stats. So these are all broken down into what genre. This is the same graph as before, but repeated onto this page. This is broken down by genre at the bottom. We can see which ones are getting the highest rating. Fantasy right here, doing great. We've got 5s, we got 4s. We got a good amount of 3s though, because I do try out a lot of fantasy. Speculative fiction has stuff all over the place. We've got 5s, we got 1s. We've got medium by genre, so we have all these genres on the bottom again, but what medium am I reading them in? You're gonna see a lot of physical books are fantasy because I buy fantasy more. You're not gonna see as many with, say, romance. Then we have adult genre breakdown. So this is this graph, but only for adult books, and this is this graph, but only for YA. And so what can we see? If I'm gonna read YA, it's mostly going to be fantasy a lot of the time. We've got some speculative, so that's like magical realism and a couple other things, but I'm not reading all of these tiny little genres in YA. Then we have the recommendation source by genre. So where am I getting these sources? So fantasy, you're gonna see a lot of author and series. We've got a lot of general fiction is from the community and not from a specific person. So these are the things that I'm seeing everywhere. Then we have pages read per genre. It makes sense that fantasy is a lot of them because those are the longest books and my most read genre. So you can see that this isn't always entirely proportionate. And this is the star rating per genre. Again, we see that science fiction is my highest, even if I've only read a little bit of science fiction. Fantasies in the middle here, about where you'd expect if I read a lot of it. And then we have the number hauled per genre, more fantasy. Got a ton of mystery thriller, even though I haven't read as much this year. I need to get through it. And then we have author stats with the genres. So the intersectionality of the author, are they a white cishet author, a white queer author, a person of color who's cishet, or a person of color who is also queer? You can see that broken down. And it does tend to be a pretty consistent proportion here. And then we have author gender identity by genre. So I do read more women than men. So I'm going to have that's kind of be bigger in a lot of these. And I also have some trans non-binary authors on here as well. I'm not sure that you can see the difference here. I should probably change this color, but I do have trans authors at the top. And then we have familiarity. Am I returning to these authors, or are they new to me? Am I repeating them throughout the year? That sort of thing. I've been reading more repeat authors this year, probably because I'm reading more. Now we're on to our author stats. So I have read a total of 61 authors out of these 65 books that I've read this year. So that means 4 times I've repeated an author. And most read author, it says Annalie Newitz for right now, but it is tied 4 ways. So we have gender identity. So we see that I have 41 authors are female. These are actually being counted by the number of books that I've read. So an author will be repeated. It's how often I'm picking up that gender author, and it continues that way throughout these statistics. 41 female authors to 19 male authors, and 4 trans, non-binary, or otherwise genderqueer authors. Then we have familiarity. We have 50% new this year authors, and then a lot of repeating authors as well. We have the author ethnicity. Again, a lot of white authors. I've read also a lot of East Asian. I've been reading a lot of East Asian fantasy right now and speculative fiction. I've been really into it. So I do want this proportion to be lower. Then we've got the author's queer identities. A lot of cis-het authors, queer identifying authors who don't identify as trans. So this is hard to do because an author isn't always going to say that they're queer online. I do not put queer on here unless they say online that they are queer. Familiarity by ethnicity. We have author gender by ethnicity. So this does tend to be pretty consistent throughout them. So we've got author ethnicity by gender identity, author ethnicity by genre. So where does this line up? This is similar to a chart that I have on genre stats, but it looks a little bit different. We have author ethnicity by recommendation source. So I have authors and series that are the white authors, and I'm getting through them, but am I getting diverse reads from the different sources that I get from? So are book clubs reading diverse authors? That is something that I actively work towards. So we have author gender by recommendation source. So male, female, trans. We have gender by genre. Again, that looks similar to one that we saw before. Author gender and queer identity, proportionally more queer female authors than queer male authors. And we've got author familiarity by gender. I've got a lot of women on here that I have read from before. I have about a split. And then we've got familiarity by genre. So breaking that down. And then familiarity by queer identity. I'm finding a lot of new queer authors to me, which makes sense. Then we have my book haul page. This is the only other page that I actually put input in. So when I get a new book, title, author, demographic, genre, like before, year published, and then we have the month I acquired it, where I acquired it from, what type of store. Then we have I read it yet? This is not done automatically. I do it manually, but I haven't had to do that yet. And if or when I read it, I'll put in what month. Then we have the price I actually paid for it, and then the retail price. I'm still trying to figure out how much my Brideshead Revisited is worth. And then I have a similar category over here for my books unhauled. And I've only got the one. I really need to sell some books. And then we have my monthly graphics. So this is something that hasn't been put in the Etsy sellable thing because this is something I've been working on, but this is little printouts or things I want to share on Instagram, on social media, just a breakdown of all of the big annual stats, but only looking at a snapshot of the month. I have books, pages read, average rating, average page count, number of 5 stars, pages per day, TBR updates, genres, star ratings, mediums, demographics, but also down here, because I have my statistics for the last couple of years, I have my 2021, 2022, and 2023 books and pages read so we can compare, which is really cool. So June is the most recent one. So this is what my last month looked like, and you can kind of see how it compares to previous months. So I had a little bit more of a spread, but a better average rating than last month. I didn't have a single 5-star, and I had a DNF. It was only 4s and 3s, very mid. This was a pretty good month, but lots of 3s, and you can see I read much more this April than in previous Aprils when I'm getting down to finals and stuff in previous years. I just think it's so fascinating to look at. I am actively working on making more charts and everything with using previous stats. I'm not sure if I'm going to sell this part. When I do update my spreadsheet that is going to be on Etsy, this part is so much under construction that this is not ready anytime soon. But this is sort of what it looks like. Books read over the years. I am above my previous years and projected in books and in pages by actually quite a bit. And this is genres proportionately, keeping them all at 100%, not looking at the numbers, but the percentages. And then I have the instructions page for when people are doing my spreadsheet. If they have any questions, they can go there first for instructions of how to run this. And yeah, that is my spreadsheet. I hope that it was fun looking at my stats and my organizational system. I adore this spreadsheet. It is my baby. If you have any questions or suggestions or just comments about how you do your tracking, I'd love to talk about it. My link is in the description if you would like to follow me anywhere, or if you'd like to check out my Etsy so you can see this spreadsheet for yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.